Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Your Roadmap to 2021. My name is James Kennedy from Parker Bridge, UK, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Lee Hawkins and Rory Coleman for today's webinar. Hello again, chaps, and thank you for joining me. Let's jump straight in. Lee, I'll start with you. You've got a diverse set of clients with some great work that you're doing with Brixton Finishing Course, also some established executives. What conversations are you having with them in regards to planning for the new year?
I'm working with from everything from students to CEOs to church deacons to TV presenters, really. So it's kind of a literal broad church. But I think the planning for next year, obviously the job market is a massive thing at the moment for me. There's a lot of really brilliant, talented individuals that have lost their roles through no fault, to their own. So they're looking at, kind of maybe how do they pivot? If they've been coming from a category that they've been in, which is, like travel, hospitality, kind of challenging times. And maybe, how do they best kind of change maybe category or role or job or career, really? I mean, that's one of the big things at the moment.
Yeah. And in terms of them being currently, let's say, benched as such, is there a consistent theme in regards to not necessarily their headspace, but in terms of their morale and esteem in regards to, how confident they are about 2021? Because let's be honest, we spoke about this on a previous webinar, but 2020 has been a bit of a car crash for a lot of people in different sectors. Some have made some great hay whilst the sun was shining, but others, like you've just alluded to in terms of travel and hospitality and leisure, has been hit pretty hard. But in terms of their morale and their feet, are they cautiously optimistic heading into 2021?
I think there's been some green shoots recently. I think with a lot of some of the categories out there, software and services and kind of elements like that. I think the themes that are coming up are confidence, and particularly maybe if you've been working a couple of decades and if you're senior. What I'm seeing a lot is, trying to help people own their experience, and kind of, and flip it as a really positive thing, that they can have top to top meetings and not that, looking upon it as, all the young people are going to be getting the roles. So I think there's a confidence there. I think the other element is in skills and strengths, and maybe the inner saboteur or the imposter syndrome is quite often, telling you that, you can only do one thing and only do one category, and actually coming outside of that and seeing what are some of the transferable skills and strengths, really. I think that's another kind of common theme.
Yeah, and certainly I've seen that from some of the candidates, especially senior candidates that you've just alluded to. Having to have those discussions. The market still, in terms from a client perspective, needs to be a little bit more agile and accepting of others with transferable skills, where typically and historically, if you don't work in retail, it's going to be pretty difficult to get into retail, and in other sectors like financial services, insurance, for example. Rory, you've also got a diverse mix of clients, and in terms of their plans, whether it be weight loss, fitness, in terms of, again, the executive coaching and business coaching as well. What common themes are you finding in the conversations, or let's say the cry for help? What are people looking for?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think people are looking in 2021 for survival. And I deal with a lot, like you say, a lot of lifestyle choices, but professionally, 2020 is gone. It's toast. We write it off. We're seeing massive losses with global companies that have never made losses in the last 25 years today. And I think people are looking for the next 4 quarters. Q1 is going to be tough. Get through Q1 and hopefully the vaccine's in place. We're starting to see some growth in Q2, Q3 summer, Q4. Well, the year's gone. And I think for a lot of people, they're just hoping they're going to get through next year, be it professionally, and also they've found it so tough in 2020. Their lifestyle sort of taken a back seat, and actually they're now thinking, right, leading up to Christmas, I can make a big difference over the next month, leading up to Christmas, have a good Christmas, and then really start on it again in January, maybe six weeks ahead of the curve. So I think you're right, Lee. The green shoots are there. People that do well, generally do well, will do well anyway. I've always said that. People will always do well. The people that are struggling, they're really going to struggle. They're really going to struggle for the next couple of months. But let's hope that 2021 is a better place. And actually, we talked about roadmap. You do need a roadmap out of this situation. You need to have some clearly defined paths, thinking, right, where on earth am I going? You can't just sort of spin around in the doldrums thinking, well, the vaccine's coming and everything's going to be okay, because actually it's not. You have to create that future. And we're in that situation where, gosh, I'm recreating lots of futures every single day. Some people find it quite challenging. I started 2 people off today on their journey. I think it's actually really exciting. It's fun. You can't change the past. We've got a blank sheet of paper. Right, where are we going? Where's 21 going to take us? That's the beauty of the future, isn't it?
So what would your advice be then in regards to that roadmap? When we talked about Q1 in terms of your opinion being survival, the next couple of months, as you also alluded to, it's going to be Christmas, typically historically a very positive time of year. It's very dark and wet as well, which sometimes could also be quite depressing, especially if there's still a lot of work from home still happening. So for some people, this transition can be, quite off-putting. It could be quite intimidating.
Yeah.
What would your advice be, chaps, in regards to putting some clear, realistic also milestones in place, and how would one measure those?
Oh, okay. So the interesting thing is, it isn't the same thing every single day. Life is different. And also, when it comes to, I am an athlete, and I'm athlete training based. We always do things in 12-week cycles. So you're training, you're doing it in a 12-week macro cycle. It's the same as a Q1, Q2, Q3, whatever. You have to try and be realistic about what's going to happen in each period. And I'm sure Lee's the same with people. Look, from December the 10th onwards, the world turns off. If you think you're going to get a new job past December the 10th, I'd say that's pretty rare. People are hiring in the new year. Are you sowing the seeds now for next year? Are you sowing the seeds in January for April? It's all that forward planning. I love to have a plan, and we need to be realistic about where your growth is actually going to happen. Work really hard in January, February, March. It starts coming off things start happening in April. If you can get things rolling in April, hopefully that's going to save you skin if you're in that situation. I've got clients in travel, and they've been destroyed. Literally, they've been destroyed. They're looking for recovery in, I don't know, 23, 24, 25. That's one hell of a spiral to get yourself out of. And you have to keep your concentration every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year on where you're going. You can't afford to take your foot off the gas, but you have to be realistic about where you're putting your energy and what your expectations are. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think the roadmaps, it's an interesting one. So I've got a lot of clients, and we're parallel pathing. So you've got the internal. If they're lucky enough to still have a job at the moment, it's kind of like, what can I do internally to either kind of change role or just nail my next promotion, or not have a nasty surprise when I'm having my review in kind of 3 or 6 months time. But then externally as well, what am I doing about my next potential role? So not necessarily all of them are wanting to leave or anything like that, but how can I build my profile, how can I build my network, how can I build my connections and things like that. And it's kind of some of my clients have 30, 60, 90, 180 day plans, probably like a lot of yours in the fitness kind of side of things. But then others, we're saying, right, your perfect role, after this year of thinking about it, your perfect role might be 1 or 2 moves away. And I think that's quite an interesting kind of time frame to get their minds reset to sometimes.
What about transferable skills? So somebody's in leisure, but they've got a degree in whatever that they've never used. I don't know. I often say to people, look, if you're the right person, it doesn't necessarily matter what you've done, what qualifications you've got. People buy people, don't they?
That's it. I think attitude, attitude was the number one thing I used to hire for when I was working in marketing. And yeah, transferable skills is kind of like you get a lot of people that might be looking at sales and going, right, I'm a good salesperson, but I'm only in this particular niche or this particular industry. And actually what I work with my clients on is, okay, well, those aren't your transferable skills, related to that category. You're tenacious, you're great at client solutions, you're friendly, you're approachable, those are all the things. And you can sell kind of baby parenting magazines, but you can also sell SaaS and cloud and, kind of, personal training devices or whatever it might be. The skills can go from one to another.
So I always think it's good that just to have a look, go for some interviews, because you can always say no. You can always say no, but you never know what's out there, and life can just take a 90-degree turn, and suddenly you're doing something totally different you never would have thought of before, and actually you find out that you're quite good at it. Just because you've done something for so long doesn't mean that you can't do something else. At the end of the day, we're all human. We've all got those qualities.
No, absolutely. And I think I'm in agreement with both of you in terms of how you summarize that. Certainly in terms of the conversations I'm having with both clients and candidates, in terms of who are gainfully employed and unfortunately are not employed at the moment, is working on that 30, 60, 90-day plan. Now that, yes, we know 2021 is going to be different, right? It can't be as bad as what this year's been. However, have some realistic expectations. It doesn't necessarily mean as 1st of January comes, suddenly there's going to be a plethora of opportunities and phone calls that you need to block out for the first week. However, start having those conversations now, just like what you talked about, Rory, in regards to the 12-week training plan. In terms of what we have within the staffing sector, is all the hard work that you're putting in today will have an influence 3 months down the line, simply because you're chipping away to clients, chipping away at candidates, etc. And similarly, your work approach, in terms of if you're looking for work, should adopt that same pattern as well. So start brushing up your CV, start putting in those in terms of your main accountabilities, your achievements, your accomplishments. Start speaking to the best headhunters and recruiters that you've worked with that have been, I suppose, consultative during your period of time. Start scanning websites in regards to direct approaches to clients, etc. And the more plates that you've got spinning, I think personally also, it keeps your frame of mind active still. Don't think of it as demoralizing, however, if you're not getting a lot of feedback or responses, because guess what? They're getting tons of applicants. But, if you've got, the more things you've got spinning, there's more opportunity that something will land. as well. And then also, therefore, you're entering the new year, not necessarily in a canter, because I don't think anyone's going to be, but you're at least you're walking a bit faster than others, whereas some are probably still climbing on the 1st of January from probably being a little bit hungover. But, don't be that person. Be ahead of the crowd. I was talking actually to a colleague, a business partner in Hong Kong, and he's in the staffing sector, Tom Birch, and the conversations that he's having with clients is, whilst the vaccine is not necessarily going to be, the big change, let's say, but what the conversations he's having with clients is, start getting your ducks in a row now. There's a lot of people that are available. There's an opportunity for you here to get the best people in the marketplace before that light switch changes. So start planning for 2021 in terms of your staffing and in terms of having the best people on board for when I think there will be a bit of an economic boom, because let's be honest, that's not where we are now. So let's actually then structure the business to get ahead of the competition. So that's the conversation that he's having with a lot of clients. And actually a lot of clients are actually going to that way of thinking, not necessarily to induct anybody now, but actually let's start interviewing people. Let's see who's available. Just like what you mentioned, Rory, in terms have conversations, have interviews. So clients, they're not necessarily tie kicking, as the expression would go, but they're actually looking to, induct people into their business, because there will be, a change next year. So, how are you going to get ahead of the competition, which both could be professionally and also personally as well?
How many times in the last couple of weeks have you heard the sentence, Lee, I'm just reaching out to you because I need some help? How many times have you heard that?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. The kind of kickstarting that conversation, a couple of times, and and I think everyone I know is pretty generous with their time.
They are, but I think the thing is, you have to be humble with it. I put an article on LinkedIn, not about me and about my services, but just about somebody that I'd helped. Within 2 hours, 5 CEOs said, I want to be like that person, help. I actually need some help, and I'm at the top of the business. A few years ago, I received 2 bits of advice. One was, and at the time I probably didn't like them very much. One was give some away, give something away, because actually you're a bit precious, and I think we can all be a bit precious sometimes. And it made a real difference to me to do that. The other thing was they just sort of said, why don't you just be humble? Just be humble and actually reach out for help, because we all need help. We're going to need help through these next few months. Okay, we're planting seeds now, and they're all going to come up green shoots in April next year, and the world's going to be fantastic, and the vaccine's going to be here, and everything's going to be fine. It's going to be a bit bumpier than that, and we are going to need some help, and we are going to need the help of colleagues, LinkedIn, families, friends, everything to get us through this time. And that's all part of that roadmap. You can't just be proud. We are proud,
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee, one of the points that we spoke about yesterday, this morning, is the transition to the modern work. Returning to the office, the workforce energy that you're missing, or that you're craving, or that you're going to go back into, and that perception of effectiveness of working from home and the efficiency as such. Are you planting the seeds of that at the moment? Is a lot of your energy spent talking about that?
Yeah, and I think energy is the key word there. And I think, it's everyone's got that chance at the moment to kind of go, what can I take from, what the positives I can take, what's the good 5% in a bad situation, what can I take in terms of energy into next year? So if they are working and they've been working remotely, it's kind of like, okay, maybe introducing more exercise, or what some people are calling a digital commute, where people actually go and walk around the block before work to get themselves into game face mode, or kind of
like it.
work mode, kind of work self, and then home self. But then also, I think just managing the energy across the year. I mean, Rory, you must see it in terms of the energy that goes from season to season as well. And it's kind of like, how can I put things in place to keep myself energized in my job, but in my life as well?
Well, there is that sort of double peak, and we go April and September. We get that double peak. Let's face it, it is pretty dim and pretty dark most of the day at the moment, and it's tough. And really, in another few weeks, we are going to switch off this year and just say, do you know what? I'm looking for a timeout. We need a timeout from all of this, and let's go into 21 and let's have a think about having a better time and a better year. Yes, it's going to happen, but we need to start thinking about what we're doing now, because we don't want to waste the next 40 days or whatever we've got left, because it's valuable time where we could be planning a future.
And that planning, what I like about what you do, and the core of what you do, is you've probably enabled people that to actually completely transform themselves. I mean, I've had a chat with a few people on video, and you go on, you go, God, you've lost like 2 stone, 3 stone, 4 stone.
Yeah.
And they've taken the good opportunity to completely transform themselves kind of physically and probably mentally over the course of this year. And then from a work standpoint, I'm looking at people who are going, right, what gaps can I fill in my knowledge? What training can I do that might, and sometimes it might not be helping them really, nail a job that's up here, but it's helping their confidence, that kind of self-confidence that they now don't think they've got that gap,
And also it builds a story. So when James is trying to place somebody, he goes, look, I've got this guy, and actually he's got a really great story of what's happened to him over the last 3 months. You go for your interview and you tell the story, and the person's like, wow, what's separating these 2 candidates? Actually, candidate A actually got off his backside, took it on, head on, and made a difference. He gets my vote because that person in my business has got that dynamism that I'm looking for, because it's a buyer's market. People are looking for dynamic. They're looking for every quality, because you can pick and choose.
No, 100%. And in terms of how do you quantify that? Well, it's because candidate X has done this. Like what Lee just mentioned in terms of upskilling, taking different courses. There's so much available at the moment in terms within a digital format that actually it'd be remiss of you not to be doing it. There's no point sitting there waiting for applications to come back, positive. So use that time, but also it keeps you intellectually, active. And when we talked earlier on within the webinar, or in terms of not necessarily having the right skill set, well, go and get it, obtain it, because there's no reason why you can't, because you're not doing anything for 8 hours a day. And also what you're doing is also building your network, because you're coming across different individuals who are also doing that course, whatever it may be, even as simple as something as an Excel course, or whatever it could be. Could even be on presenting skills. Because a lot of that is going to be now in terms of the new world of, on video conferencing and meetings and everything. So allowing people to be slightly more confident when you don't necessarily have, the water cooler moments like what we discussed in a previous webinar. Leah, in terms of, I'm such a massive advocate for the digital commute, and I'm still in transition of getting dressed for work at home. So today this is a one-off. As you could tell, my blazer is painfully on. But in terms of what I've been trying to do is in going for a run in the morning, in terms of just getting your mind stimulated. Carrying on a different webinar mentioned that she goes for a coffee. Just because it's still as part of that transition of going from especially parent to to work. Some parents may do the school run because you can do that before 9 o'clock, pick up the coffee on the way back home and get into work mode. And are you seeing anything else that you're advising clients, or something that's really working with others that we can advise others that they can be doing also?
Well, I think if you roll out of bed at 8:30 and you go straight to your computer, there's a massive overwhelm of probably emails coming in from all over the world, and all of a sudden you're straight into work. It's the same as a bad habit of checking your phone if you leave that next to your bed. So I think you ask, in my coaching sessions, I ask my clients, what was your commute? What did it used to be like? And they say, well, I'd get up and I'd have a cup of tea, then I'd walk 15 minutes to the station listening to the radio, and then I'd get on the train and read my book, and then I'd get on the underground and listen to a podcast, and then I'd get to work and I'd have a coffee and I'd have a little chat with a couple of people by the coffee machine, and then I'd get back to work. And you go, that is a lot more chilled, isn't it, than getting out of bed and going, right, what's everyone after me? What's gone wrong? Where are the fires? So I think when you unpick that with clients, trying to put some of those things back in is something. Really
and what's the reaction, Lee? They just go, oh yeah. It's like oh yeah, I'm actually, it's just giving me 2 more hours a day to answer emails.
Yeah.
Whereas if you got up at 6 o'clock and you did 10,000 steps, you got your heart health done for the day, you've been active, you've got a good hit of oxygen, and actually you thought about what you're going to do during the day.
Yeah.
It's that metacognition that we just don't have nowadays. Thinking time. You need time to think. Men need sheds. I often say this to my wife: we need a shed. We'll just go down the shed and we'll just tinker for an hour. We're not going to do. It's like watching
a new version of a cave.
Yeah, it is like a man cave, or watching Top Gear for an hour. You just watch it, but actually during that time, you're not really concentrating on what's going on. You're planning, and that's what we need. We need time to plan to get our route sorted out, and sorting out the route in the morning is a really, really excellent way of starting the day. And it's something I just say, everybody, do your steps, do it first thing in the day, because if you're doing them at night, you'll never do it.
Yeah, and it's mental health as much as physical health, isn't it, Rory? It's kind
of course it is.
If you do get it in the morning, it's also, there's no guilt about not getting it done later on in the day. For me, it just clears the mind and focuses the mind on planning the day ahead.
Yeah, also just from a self-worth perspective, it's just something else that you've ticked off the box, but it's actually been a very positive thing that you've ticked off the box as well. And I know, when we've worked together, Rory, and, I've got a training run to do and you try and put it off and you just resent doing it. Because it's just hanging over you all day. And I liked when I was in the office, I'd have 3 runs a week at lunchtime, and I really used to look forward to that because it was an opportunity for me to switch off, get my shed time, cave time, and to do a lot of thinking, but also it's a lot of processing as well. But
what did that do for your confidence? So
it was great.
You get fitter, you get healthier, you lose some weight. You look better, and when you're presenting to people, people buy with their eyes. We're looking at that.
I'm
person.
Still working on that, Rory.
But people buy with their eyes, don't they? Do we believe what this person's saying? And appearance does help. It does matter in these situations. It does.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not necessarily when we're talking about the Adonis syndrome appearance, but it's just in terms of if you feel that much better, you present better, you give a better version of yourself. So therefore, the conversation, the pitch is slightly more credible and authentic. So chaps, I'm just looking at the time here. So if I can come to each of you in regards to the one bit of advice that we can tell our viewers for the roadmap for 2021, Lee, what would that be?
I think that setting yourself some kind of timing goals. So, knowing what you want to achieve in like 3, 6 and 12 months, I think would be, good timing, good kind of timing points that enable you to think small and immediate, and then also, larger. I think those kind of timing goals would be what I'd go with.
Okay. And Rory?
I would remain open-minded and be prepared for a bit of a bumpy ride, but be prepared to change your opinion and be humble for the year. And I think people will get through and hopefully gain that brighter future. But yeah, I think it has to be flexible. Certainly be flexible. And the biggest one next year, big bullet point, survive. You need to survive at all costs. So put yourself first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And from the staffing sector, I think for us, it's, what we're advising, be cautiously optimistic. However, be prepared to work hard as well. Just because we're going into 2021, like I mentioned earlier, the world's not suddenly going to be utopia and rainbows and butterflies. However, there's going to be a bit more optimism. I think only because part of it is that there's a 1 at the end of 20, and 2. So therefore, we're not going back to February of 2020. However, be prepared to work, create opportunities for yourself and those around you.
Nobody's going to give you this. You've got to work for it. Plain and simple.
No, 100%. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure once again. Thank you for joining today on today's webinar, and look forward to seeing you both on the next one.
Yeah.
Good to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Bye-bye.